Hello, I am Dr. Rod Supol, a lecturer at a vet school in Trinidad, and Dr. Jennifer Peterson from Portland State University and I prepared this presentation. It's about Chagas disease and Trinidad. So here's some basic information. Chagas disease is caused by the flagellate protozoan parasite Trypanosoma cruzi, which lives in the blood. Chronic infection can lead to heart problems. Now, this disease has been present in the Americas for thousands of years, being mainly in the forested areas with the bugs and forest mammals. However, there are over 7 million people currently affected, again mainly in Americas. However, over 70 million are at risk because of migration of people from the Americas to other countries. It causes over 12,000 deaths per year. So how is it spread? It's spread in the excrement of the triatamine bugs. So the organism is present in the feces. It's not spread via the bite. However, the feces can get into the bite wound and cause infection. And that is the main method of spread. It's also spread through food or drink contaminated with the infected bug or its feces. So there's one village in Venezuela where the bugs got into the juice and the entire village got infected, or most of them anyway. And then it's spread through contaminated blood via blood transfusion or contaminated organs via organ transplantation, as well as from mother to fetus. So here's the transmission cycle. As I said before, the infected bug would bite and defecate at the bite site, and if the feces where the organism is rubbed into the bite site, then it gets into the body. It then goes throughout the body, through the blood, into the tissues, mainly the muscle, especially cardiac muscle, and you get cardiac disease because of that. And then the organisms could go back into the blood, and another bug could pick it up and transmit it to someone else. So what are the signs and symptoms in humans? So in humans, there are two main phases. There's the acute phase, which occurs soon after being bitten and lasts about 4 to 8 weeks. And this is generally curable. And then the chronic phase, where after the acute phase, the organism goes into a state of dormancy and then could cause disease later on. And this is usually incurable and has a lifelong infection. So we are in the acute phase. It occurs immediately after infection, lasting up to 4 to 8 weeks. Generally starts off with flu-like symptoms, headache, fever, malaise. So when the organism is in the body, there's a reaction in the skin at that location, and that's called a chagoma, creating a bump. Or if it's near the eye, it's known as Romagna's sign, as we see here. So approximately 30% of infected people will develop illness in the chronic phase. Fortunately, 70% do not. In the chronic phase, the symptoms will be heart palpitations, shortness of breath, severe constipation, and this is because the organism multiplies in the heart muscle, leading to heart failure later on, as well as causing megaesophagus, which causes the gastrointestinal complications. So what are the treatment? Treatment is available for the acute phase, and there are two drugs, one being nifurtimox, which is FDA approved, and the other is not. However, it is used in other countries. Chagas disease also occurs in dogs, and we've been finding cases in dogs in Trinidad. So it's also transmitted in the same way to dogs. So the infected bug will bite, and then the feces could be rubbed into the wound, causing infection. Or more commonly, dogs would eat the infected bugs, which is causes a more severe infection. And in dogs, it also causes cardiac pathology as well as nervous system pathology. And infection can also be lifelong. Unfortunately, in dogs, there is no treatment or vaccine currently available. So what is the status of this disease in Trinidad? 6 species of vectors have been found to be present in Trinidad, and these are listed here, with 2 main ones being Panthrogylus geniculatus and Rodnius pectipes, depicted here in these pictures. Right, and these have been found to be infected with the organism. So in the past, so these bugs would live in the forests and feed on forest mammals and birds. So the nymphal stages would be unable to fly. So they need to be able to have a ready blood meal in order to grow and become adults. So they would tend to live in animal burrows or nests where they would have some animal coming to rest and they would feed on those animals. And eventually they become adult and get wings and be able to fly and feed on other animals. Right, so it's generally mainly in forested areas. However, due to clearing of forests or people living close to forests or uh, other environmental factors, provision of nesting places close to homes or homes with dirt or thatch roofs or even plywood or unrendered blocks where the bugs could hide, they could then live in close to human dwellings or in human dwellings and cause disease in people. So the bugs are generally found in higher numbers in the dry season. So let's look at some of the historical data on chagas disease in Trinidad. First human cases being found in around 1963. Following that, a serosurvey was done, just about 0.45% being serologically positive, meaning that they've reacted to the organism. And over 200 vectors, or about 200 vectors, were found in the homes of these infected patients. And about 50% of these were found to be infected with T. cruzi. Later on, in 1982, there were 6 species of capable vectors found in Trinidad. And in 1992, 72 out of 192 cardiac patients were found to be serologically positive, meaning that they would have reacted to the organism at some point in time. In the most recent study, in 2016, bugs were found around human homes, and human and animal blood meals were found in them. Because of PCR analysis of the gut contents, we found human DNA as well as other animal DNA. So these results suggest that the bugs are able to move between forested areas and residential areas. And in Caracas, the most common vector, Panthrongylus geniculatus, has been found in more increasing frequency in and around human dwellings in residential areas and in urban areas. And bugs have been found, while they mainly occur in the dry season, they've also been found in residential areas in the rainy season as well. So out of all the studies that have been done previously, the blue dots represent the locations where the bugs are found, and you can see it's closely associated with the green or lighter green areas where there is forest. And the red dots represent canine or dog cases in dogs that have been found over the past 5 to 10 years, with 3 of these mainly occurring over the last 2 to 3 years. And they closely correlate with the locations of the bugs, except maybe this one, where either there are probably bugs close by or the dog may have migrated from a location where there are bugs. So these vectors tend to hide in and around. One of the more common areas would be common locations to find them in the Latin American countries would be the Atalaya palm, or what we call cocoa trees. And they tend to come to houses where there are lights outside and where there are animals outside. So that's why we were able to capture this one. So if we play with the numbers a little bit, Trinidad population is about 1.3 million people. In Central America, the average prevalence is about 1%. So it is possible that approximately 13,000 people could be infected with this organism. And in Brazil in 2010, the mortality was about 2.3%, which leads to possible numbers in Trinidad being around 300. Of course, other factors come into play, including poverty, where these people would live, the presence of the bugs, the presence of the hiding places for the bugs, as well as the level of infection of the bugs. So the National Blood Bank seroprevalences for T. cruzi in chagas endemic countries versus Trinidad. So all of these other countries are chagas endemic, and the prevalence would be 0.01% to 0.19% and 0.24%. In Trinidad, because we usually test the blood of blood donors for the disease, because that's one of the more common ways of surveillance for this disease. Out of that data, 0.24% were found to be positive. So indicating that this disease is present in Trinidad, and that Trinidad has to look at being declared being chagas endemic. So this is an example of the feces of the bug that might contain the organism. This one does. So let's play the video and we'll show you the organism. So this is one of them here. All right, it's not well stained, but you still can see them. There's another one here. And then you'll see the organisms wiggling in the bug feces. There's one here and another one here. And we found cases of this disease in dogs in Trinidad. This is a 1.5-year-old hound dog in Trinidad. And this are the signs that it displayed. You can see it's unable to walk properly, unable to stand properly. There's weakness in the legs, indicating some spinal cord damage. It wasn't eating properly. Right. So the owner elected for euthanasia because of the incurable nature of the disease. And this was the blood sample from the dog with the flagellate protozoal organism found in the blood. This is the heart from that dog with the amastigotes in the heart muscle. And there's inflammation around it, so there's myocarditis. And this is the spinal cord of the dog. And these are areas of damage to the spinal cord. So in another case, because we've been doing some surveillance in wildlife, we found an armadillo where there were nymphal stages in the armadillo burrow. So those are the younger stages of the bug. And in the armadillo's blood, we found the organism. These are the flagellate protozoan in the blood of the armadillo. And this armadillo also had myocarditis. So this leads us to think that this disease might be a problem in Trinidad. We know it's here. We know it's affecting dogs. We know it's present in the bugs. We know there is evidence in humans, but we don't know the exact status of the disease in humans. So further work needs to be done. So firstly, we need to determine what species of bugs we have that are capable of transmitting the organism in Trinidad. We know there are 2 definitely, possibly 4 others, and maybe others, depending on location. So we're asking the public's help in finding these bugs. Of course, they mainly come out at night and mainly in the dry season. So we need to find out the rate of occurrence of the organism that causes the disease, T. cruzi, in these bugs, what these bugs are feeding on, where they are getting their blood meals from, whether it's humans, dogs, domestic animals, and wild animals. And as well as the distribution of these bugs in Trinidad, we need to know where they are located. So proper preventative measures could be taken, and what habitat factors would affect the distribution of these bugs, whether it's forests, whether it's the type of housing, whether you have animals in your premises, or whether you have hiding spaces for these bugs. Then we need to find out the probability of transmission to humans. So we need to test humans that are at risk, as well as dogs that are at risk, to find out what is the level of infection, right? And what are the animal-associated risk factors, as well as the level of infection in wildlife, right? So this disease is a typical example of One Health disease, where it affects wildlife, it affects people, and it affects domestic animals. And several environmental factors come into play. So things that will affect the distribution of the vector, the presence or absence of forests, the presence or absence of other environmental factors such as hiding places for the bugs. So this is very important, and so this will allow us to determine the level of threat this poses to both humans and animals in Trinidad. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation and hope it improve your knowledge, and thank you, and hope that you assist us with this research. Thank you again.